something that started very early on for me because I knew that I wanted more out of life. And I always seeked every opportunity to kind of just like, how can I hack it? You know what I mean? How can I get there faster? Like,
All right, so we're back for another episode of Fully Funded today. I'm super excited because we have some amazing guests here. So, Fully Funded, the podcast where we discuss everything from health, wealth, finance, really how to kind of hack life and live to the fullest. And we've had some exciting episodes so far. So, we're going to go ahead and get started here with our amazing guests, straight from the Nona Hood. Is that what you said?
Nona Hood. I
Lake
like
Nona
it.
Heights.
Lake Nona Heights. So I'm here with great friends of mine and neighbors, actually.
Neighbors live on the same street.
Mary and Randy. Made sure to say Mary first. Before we started this, she said, Zach, you better say my name before anything that I'm the woman around here. So, yeah, guys, super excited to have you. How's everything going?
Everything's going well. Thank you for the invite. Appreciate you being on this. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode. And we've got I don't want to say trusty sidekick because you never really sidekick.
I already made that joke.
Yeah, it's Christian over here. So, guys, let's kind of jump right into it. So, as we were kind of talking pre-show about the whole premise of Fully Funded and why I really had you guys on here is like, Fully Funded for us is like Christian and I are kind of like grew up kind of hacking everything, right? And we actually know each other through one of our side hustles, right? Which is the car stuff, and we'll talk about that. But just really encompassing living a full life, of what do you call abundance and kind of having everything you could possibly imagine. But how do you do that being responsible? How do you do that the most financial savvy ways, et cetera, et cetera? So love for you guys to tell a little bit about yourself and, your background and what got you here. And we're going to learn all about all the little life hacks you guys got going on right now.
I love it.
there are a lot. So.
Yeah.
There are a lot. So,
Yeah.
Mary, take us away.
No. So I guess to do due diligence, we should really talk about how Randy and I met.
Sure.
Because I feel that life got really interesting when we met. And
It got real.
his life doesn't exist before me. So
Right, that's true.
you can
Yeah.
take it away.
That's usually how it is.
Yeah, so when Mary and I met, we met in New York City. So we were both working in the city. We lived in New Jersey, working there, and we met crossing the street. She was working for one.
You met
company.
crossing the street,
Crossing
literally?
Dude, it
Literally.
was so iconic,
Literally
like a
crossing the street.
movie.
Yeah,
That's
she's
cool.
coming one way. I'm going the
Did you
other
guys
way.
sell the movie rights yet? 'Cause
We're working on that.
We're working on it.
So she's walking one way, I'm walking another. We see each other. We kind of knew each other before that, and was kind of like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" We crossed the street. Long story short, now we have 2 kids.
Were you as buff and sexy as you are now
Yeah,
then?
it was, and I just got back from Brazil. I was on a trip to Brazil on a business trip, and I was all tan.
He
like,
was
ready,
glistening
I was
from
How,
across
how
the
long ago
street.
was that?
That was 10 years
10
ago.
years, almost 10.
Almost 10.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Mary and I, we took off right away. I mean, we got serious pretty quickly because I think we were both at a stage of our life where we were like, hey, we're ready to take this to the next level, really find somebody in our life that we really could build a life with, right? So we got serious right away. I mean, we moved in within 6 weeks
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
of being together.
Did you just like walk from the street to the leasing office?
Yeah,
and just
that's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much
yeah.
it. Yeah,
That's
pretty
pretty
much
much-
it. Yeah, after like a couple of weeks, she was staying over at my place, and I was just like, what are you doing? You're like just paying for like a really expensive closet for your apartment. So why don't we put that together, start saving money so we can buy a house? And that's exactly what we did within 6 months.
Well, no, side note, I kind of got pregnant at 4 months.
Oh, jeez.
On our first
And
vacation.
On our first vacation, on our first real
That first vacation was lit.
It
Huh?
was super lit.
super
Tequila
fire.
shots in Mexico.
Sorry, man. Me and my wife, we conceived the night
Do you remember
right
which
before
one?
Yeah, I do remember. Thank you. Then we went right into it the night we were getting married.
Yeah,
it was in,
shit.
so
Yeah, I like it. I like
it
it.
happens.
Yeah, no, we did it. We were in Mexico, so we called our first daughter Baby Nacho because it
Well,
was.
there's a funny story behind that. Well, we didn't know the gender of the baby. I just hoped it was a baby, right? Not like
Yeah.
a baby
Yeah.
puppy. Anyway, so people would refer, and I'm like, yeah, it's Baby Nacho.
Baby
'Cause,
Nacho.
yeah, like we
Conceived
thought
in Mexico.
conceiving
But
combos.
but just jumping ahead of that, it's just like you said, Zach, when you started off the intro on this podcast is, we were trying to figure out, well, how do we live today, right? How do we figure out, I didn't want to take that route of saying I want to save my money and put it in 401k and, and then when I'm 60, 65, retire, and then I could enjoy my life and buy the car that I always wanted or have
Yeah.
the house or my dream home. And we said, how do we figure out how to do that today? Like, what are the things that we can do to be able to buy the house that we really want? What are the things we do to drive the cars we really want, take the vacations we really want to take? And I think that that's where we started to kind of brainstorm and how do we do that. And that's where the whole kind of life hacking comes in, where we started to figure out, well, what is the first step? Well, we need a house. We need to secure that for our family. Mary was pregnant. And that's when we jumped into real estate and said, hey, real estate could be the way for us to be able to start kind of really building wealth for ourselves and start really experiencing using that extra cash, experiencing life today versus waiting for tomorrow or for the future.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we took off was with real estate.
So where was that driving, motivating factor behind like wanting to like experience a certain life? Like for me, you know, when I was growing up, I had two sides of my family. I actually had my dad's side, very blue collar. He owned a convenience store in New Jersey.
Love it.
He was getting, you know, he'd leave the house at 4 a.m. every morning to open up the store, 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. No life, really, but always had, you know, like new house, new car, very simple, none of the crazy luxuries in life. But he would always kind of keep me humble and be like, we're going to live a simple life. But then I had my grandfather who, you know, founding partner of a big accounting firm in New Jersey. I remember very vividly when I was young, he had always the newest Jag convertible, you know,
classic.
ballin' house in, you know, Florham Park, New Jersey,
Oh,
you
forget
know,
about
like,
it.
yeah, like I would, you know, country club type of thing. So I was like very tainted early on. So then when I ever started making a little bit of money, I was like, oh, like, what are the things I remember? Oh, my grandma wore Ferragamo slip-ons after dinner,
like
you
it.
know, when she would carry that little dust bag with her. So, like, I had all these things kind of, like, pulling me when I was growing up to kind of want the finer things in life. What was it for you?
Yeah. Right.
Well, it wasn't like that. I was born and raised in Dominican Republic till I was 7. So I hit the States and New York City being my home, downtown. I grew up in Lower East Side. And I literally lived in a rent-controlled apartment with 2 grandmas. And we really didn't have much of anything. They lived off disability checks or Social Security money, and that was it. So my upbringing in the island and back in New York City were very humble. But that kind of, you know, watching the real world, I guess, outside of my apartment on the TV, what people were doing, people in Wall Street with suits and all these fancy things in Beverly Hills, etc. I was living my life vicariously through TV. So I always knew that I wanted to be successful. I didn't know what that was. So I worked really hard to get everything right. So I wanted to piggyback on what Randy said because I feel like one of our biggest flexes when we met, we were both 29 when we met. We had already done an insane amount of like self-work, you know, like self-development. And we were so determined to always be the best version of ourselves. And I think that started very early on for me because I knew that I wanted more out of life. And I always seeked every opportunity to kind of just like, how can I hack it? You know what I mean? How can I get there faster? Like I never did my junior year. I skipped that. I went from being a sophomore to a senior. College, you know, 3 years, babies, boom, boom, boom. So we moved kind of fast, right? And I really feel like that drive was always there. Yeah. And it propelled us up until where we met. And then it started with really skipping the wedding when we got pregnant. Remember that?
Yeah. So that's a good story. So before I jump into that, for me, it was just a little bit different, similar. Didn't grow up with much either. Yeah. 2 immigrant parents. And honestly, to make a long story short, I was fortunate enough that my father was an extremely hard worker. My mom too. My father was a cab driver. My mom was working in factories her whole life. And it was just that mentality of like, this is it. Like, this is life. We pay rent and, you know, I need you to go to school because that's the way that it is. And then you get married and hopefully if you have enough money, you buy a house or not. Like there wasn't really much ambition. But for me, I kind of looked at it different because I saw the struggles of my parents. And I was like, I think it's bullshit that I have the opportunity to do more. They sacrifice so much. So for me, I always had like that drive. And I remember going to like, you know, I played football and had to travel on the school bus, right, to get to games. And I remember driving through like Wayne, New Jersey, or like, and just seeing these massive houses. I'm like, how do people get that?
That was Zach's grandpa's house.
No,
not that one.
Which grandpa?
And I was just like, how do people get that, man? And I just always had that little bit of like interest and curiosity of like, how do we do that? That's why I ended up like sort of on Wall Street because it was like, oh, everybody here must work on Wall Street. If they're not an athlete or a singer or a celebrity, they're working on Wall Street.
What do you do on Wall Street?
So I worked for an insurance company on Wall
Okay.
Street. Yeah.
His mom's from Wall Street.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny because like I think for most families, it's who's gonna break the cycle.
Yeah.
And like for you guys, like for my parents, it was my parents that broke the cycle. But like for you guys, you broke the cycle, and you said, "This is not how I'm going to keep living. I'm going to find new ways." And you get together, you buy a house, and so like first of all, that's amazing, and I think that a lot of people need to hear that message because there's a lot of people that don't believe outside of it. They just think this is my life. Like my dad always talks about, he's like, I can go to the same neighborhood, not same neighborhoods because they've gentrified everything, and now it's ridiculous.
it's
But
different,
like typically, you see the same people just sitting there 20 years later because they never saw beyond what was basically told to them, like, this is it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That's 100% to what Mary said, right? She lived in a rent control apartment. Usually that's passed down to the next person, right? Like now Mary takes that rent control and that's what she's going to live. Like that's the mentality that we came from. And I think for us, we just saw it different. Like there's a huge world out there. How the hell do we explore that, right? That was kind of our goal.
So how'd you break that? I mean, you got your How Motors, right? So how did you get from there to where you're at today living in East Orlando?
Well, it all started with.
Hey, don't put Lignona in East Orlando.
Sorry.
No.
Southeast Orlando.
Shout out
you,
to
thank you.
32827.
Yeah.
No. I think it all started with the decision that, first we were aligned right from the beginning. When we met, we did things super fast. But I guess when you know, and we were quickly aligned on the same priorities. We had the same beliefs, and we just really wanted the same kind of life plan. You know, like I'm not here to mess around. I'm almost 30. I want to have kids. I want to buy a house. Fuck this wedding shit. You know, it's probably gonna cost us like
Can we
60
curse on this
grand.
show?
I'm sorry,
Is
you
that
can
okay?
edit it. I'm sorry. Oh my god, I forgot.
I mean,
So-
I do all the time.
Okay.
I don't know.
So, if you think about it, a wedding is kind of like a down payment to a decent home if you want to skip the PMI,
Right.
back in 2015. So that's exactly where we started kind of like hacking. We're like, well, let's have this baby and just go to the court and get married and just have one person.
Yeah.
And have this wedding when we can actually afford it. Let's
So
secure a nice home. And then I think entrepreneurship for us started with our first purchase because we identified pretty much the best house and probably one of the best neighborhoods, shout out to Bergen County. And it was A1 school. And what we were looking for was not just the perfect started home, but we also identified that where can we make some money out of this also? So our first home had a basement that was not finished, but it had a private entrance. So the minute that we moved in there, we were like, well, mortgage is XYZ. So if we invest X amount of dollars, we might be able to get a tenant there. And that covers, let's say, a lot. And for us, it was a lot of help.
Yeah, so the mortgages were high, taxes are high in Jersey, but we said, okay, we can rent out the basement. We were getting about $1,000 at that point from the rental in the basement. It was a young single woman who was living there. She was barely home, which was great, right? So now we're getting that additional income, which is helping us with our mortgage, right? So we're like, okay, this is good. So we got a little bit of extra cash that we can deal with. And I think that started to continue to spark that interest in like, oh, we can actually make money off of this.
Or how do we live for free?
Yeah, how do we live for free? Exactly. That's exactly the right
Well,
word.
actually, you should tell them about when we transitioned to a 15-year mortgage.
Yeah, so then we transitioned. we then said, okay, well, now we can buy another house, right? Let's figure out how to buy another house. Take this. Now we're renting the basement. We're renting the first floor. We're making 2 incomes off of this. What's that going to buy us, right?
Yeah.
It's going to buy us a bigger home, right? And then we said, okay, now how do we invest the equity off this house?
Yeah.
So we just kept building like that. But, one of the things for us where we got to today is, and I want to hit back on the point of like hacking life, right? It was looking at it from a perspective of how do we get our overhead lower so that we can afford more, right? But and live more at that moment. But at the same time, how do we continue to invest into that, right? To buy more and get more, right? And I think that every single home that we've bought has been with, well, we have rental income coming from additional properties that we've bought. We can afford this now.
Exactly.
Right? And that's been the key. It hasn't been just because I have a salary or Mary has a salary or, the regular income that's coming in. It's more like, well, we have a lot more that's happening that's affording us this life.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a great point because obviously, my 9 to 5 is mortgages. My 9 to 5 is mortgages. And like right now, when I talk to a lot of people, they're like, man, how do I afford that new house with where interest rates and payments and everything are. And I'm like, well, you're thinking about renting out your house. The one thing that you get to benefit from is like, what's your mortgage payment? They're like, oh, $1,400. I'm like, I know your house is going to rent for $3,000 or something like that. So you can take some of that money and you can, you know, continue to increase your lifestyle if you understand those principles. But people just think so one-dimensional all the time.
Yeah, we kept thinking about it, and to Christian's answer your question, right? Then that evolved into, okay, we got this game down, right, in terms of the housing, right? Like, how do we get a bigger house? How do we get a nicer house? How do we continue to invest? How do we play with that equity? How do we play with the, you know, the additional income, that cash flow that's coming in on a monthly basis? Cool. We understand how to manage tenants. We understand that. We build a business off of that, where we're saying, well, now we're managing our own properties, right? So that's where House of Wolves came from, where we started managing our own rental properties. And then we transition and say, okay, well, what's next? Like, what's your next biggest expense? And that's cars, right? That's usually your next biggest expense. And we got to a point where I was like, all right, Mary, I'm ready for my BMW. All right, I'm ready to get it. She's like, I'm not trying to make that payment. I was like, well, actually, we can go this route. And that's where we discovered Turo.
So was that like your first like nice car was when, because you guys were making money before?
No, it was right before we met, but we got pregnant so fast.
Right.
We both had coupes, two-door cars. Right?
I had an Infinity, and she had an Audi. And
TT, by the way.
It was a nice one. And because we were single, living that single life, and then when we got together, we had to think about the kids, so we got like a Nissan Murano. I think we had traded in both cars.
I hated my life, bro. I think
and
that's
we got
where
a Nissan,
the real Turo started.
which was great. It was a great car. It worked for us with having a baby, a car seat, and all that. So that was we had Nissans from there. So we had a Nissan Murano, and then we had a Nissan Rogue. And then I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to get something that, you know, is for me. And that's what we ended up going.
Wait, it's nothing against Nissan. First of all, that first
I love
Murano.
Nissan.
No. That first Murano we had was so badass. It was a platinum. It was like the first generation of like the sensors of the blinkers. It was perfect for awesome. A new baby. But I hated the fact that I was like morphing myself into like, I went from like a little Audi TT to like a fucking minivan in my eyes. I'm like, fuck this. Like,
sure
when are we gonna get?
It wasn't a minivan, but in her mind, everything's a minivan.
Like,
the doors were sliding open.
Everything's a minivan.
Everything was a minivan.
So we just got to that point where we said, okay, well, managing your responsibility, right, and saying, okay, right now we have to continue to focus on investing into real estate. That was our thing. We got to continue to figure out how to continue to get an income from there.
Are you still in New Jersey at this time?
By the time we started the car rental company, we were in Florida.
We're
in Florida already.
What brought you even to Florida? Like, why did you transition?
Same thing, lifestyle.
Okay.
So,
and we were trying to hack a free babysitter.
Yeah. So when we got pregnant, literally after like 3 months at my our first daughter, my parents decided to retire and come down to Kissimmee. And her parents decided to retire like a month after that, and they went to Dominican Republic. So then we're like, they literally just left us alone with this brand new baby.
They're like, oh, you guys are pregnant?
They were like all excited, like, oh yeah, you guys have to have kids.
Fault. They left you alone.
Yeah, they left us alone. And then I'm like, we came down one weekend to visit my parents in their new house, and Mary and I just walking around the block, and we were like, wow, we're actually away from our daughter, which we love our daughter, but at this time, like, we actually have a walk by ourselves. This is awesome. I'm like, hey, what do you think? This is pretty cool. We started looking at home prices. It was a lot cheaper in terms of, you know, Jersey prices are crazy. And we're like, wow, we can get something much bigger here and have a much better life here than what we had in Jersey. And that's where we made the move.
So all I'm thinking about is we're talking about this Turo business and transitioning. All I keep thinking about is constantly seeing these bright color cars scattered all over Lake Nona. the AMG GT, the Lambo, the Porsche. I'm like, man, who is this guy? and what are all these cars? So like you know, I want people to kind of walk away from this and kind of learn, like, you know, some of these tricks, and maybe you guys can give away some stuff. You know, when everybody asks me, because now obviously we've got some things going together. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. They gotta protect them at all costs. Man. But maybe if they listen to this podcast and get a little bit. So let's talk about it. So what is this business, and like how did it start?
And started from the BMW, because like we want to hear the evolution of this.
So we had just moved from Kissimmee, which we made when we moved from New Jersey. We bought 2 miles away from our in-laws because we thought his mom was going to take care of our second baby. Didn't really work out that way.
Trying to life hack babysitter.
Trying to life hack a babysitter. That didn't work. So we found ourselves in Laurier Park, which, by the way, was a huge fail on our end because we were introduced to Laurier Park back in around that time on that first trip here. And we were like, nah, we'll pass on Laurier Park. We're going to go close to Poinciana where our in-laws are. And we're going to buy there. We had this badass house. We loved it. But guess what? It was such a trap. We couldn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
So we ended up in Laurier Park. And of course, the mortgage was like double. And at this point, I had already, I didn't work corporate anymore. So we were minus one salary, 2 babies, and now we kind of like doubled our mortgage.
Yeah.
The rentals in New Jersey were paying for themselves, but because there were like houses that were built in 1920s, there was always kind of like something brewing, you know. So we really didn't like. We were not making that much cash flow. They were just getting paid for themselves and a little, you know, and then some. So when Randy said, hey, listen, you know, I'm at a stage in my life where, you know, I need a real car. And I was like, okay, well, we got real bills.
All right,
They say that, yeah. She's like, all right, cool.
Okay, cool. And then I said, no, that's absolutely ludicrous. Like, we are down to one salary. We can't do this. And then Randy said, well, there's this app. I heard about it. I think it's called Turo. I mean, you can put your car there and, you know, maybe even if it makes like half the car note, you know, I'll be happy. And I was like, well, actually, if the mortgage is, you know, $1,300, then I could do $700 for you to be happy. Okay, I guess. And I kid you not, we still had our little Nissan Murano, little orange one.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
Did you list it?
Yeah.
No, we listed it that day. The next day, it got booked, right? Yeah. It got booked, and that was like our only car because we like what
got rid of the other car.
We got rid of the other car, and we only had one car in Florida. And we're like, okay, so what happens now? Like, first of all, we don't even know the process. We didn't even do our homework. We just listed the car. Like, we didn't even think that was gonna happen. So we listed the car. The car is booked now. We have 2 babies, car seats. Everything's in there. We don't even know what to do. And I'm like, okay, we need a car.
We're gonna figure this out, yeah.
And
like, babe, you got your BMW now?
Yeah.
So take it from there, because
so we go to look for it. I'm like, I'm gonna get it. My favorite car of all time was always a M6, right? So M6.
Bro, mine too.
Yeah,
I used to have posters and everything.
Yeah,
of
that car.
M6s.
I've always loved that. So,
Screensavers, actually.
Yeah.
It was not posters.
I think out of the 20 cars you've owned, that would have been
yeah,
one of
that
them.
party might have been one, right? We can still get it.
You want to count?
We'll count.
I still got the Carfax for it. It's alive.
So we show up to, I look for it on Auto Trader. We show up to a theater where we found one, good price. I go in, it's in beautiful blue, nice leather interior, and I'm like, oh, this is the one. We check out, and I'm like, babe, listen, we're renting out the other car. We're going to make this happen. The payment is high. It is what it is. You know, we get approved for the car, and we're like, all right, we're going to do this. While we're literally signing the papers for the car, like literally sitting down with the finance manager, I am on my phone listing the car. I already had to
All you need is a VIN.
All you need is the VIN. So I had the VIN. We didn't even have signed for it yet, and I already listed the car. And literally, we leave with the car keys, and on the way home, the car got booked.
That's crazy.
On the way home, the car gets booked, and I'm like, oh my god, this car just
How did
got
you even pick
booked.
the price to list it? Like, what was your mindset of like?
So
how
we
do
did
you
our
know what number to
research.
put in?
Yeah, we did our research. I looked at the market. I looked at, you know, not just Orlando, but we looked at Miami. We looked at, you know, in Florida. What's that looking? I looked in Jersey. I just did my research on them. Turo also provides some calculators and things like that. But basically, I was going off of what's my monthly payment? How many days do I have to rent this car in order for it to get paid? Yeah. What is something that's sustainable for me and makes sense, right? So we just listed it and went off of a limb to try to make it happen, and it literally got booked. So then we're driving home. I'm like, oh, my God, now we got to clean this. Like, we didn't have a structure. We didn't have anything to really sustain this business. It was more like, let's just try it. Well,
it wasn't a business yet. At this point, it was just like, well, Randy got his car. Right. We got our little Murano there. That's our baby car. Like, you know, what are we going to do? Now we're like just playing Tetris. And then, of course, because I'm so selfish, we were like driving home with the M6, and I'm here like following in the Murano. I was like, well, I need my fucking car too, you know? And
tell us more how much you hate this car.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, she hated it.
So while we were looking at the M6, there was a white GLE, white Mercedes GLE, and I was like,
it's a 53. It's nice.
It was gorgeous, right? It was amazing. And I was like, oh, we're going to go get that shit. And then
we're going to put this on Turo.
Yeah, we're going to put it. So we literally, after it got booked.
I wish I knew you guys earlier, because I sold a lot of cars.
Are you serious?
So we got the BMW, and then after like a week, we had back to the car, to the dealership, and we buy the Mercedes for Mary at that point. And then it just started things started picking it up, and I started to do more of my research. Mary started like, okay, how do we structure this? What does this look
Right.
like? What are the right things we need to do? We started to like Google and YouTube and figure out other people that are what they're doing, and then we started adding our own personal touch. And we always had sort of that customer service side because the rentals that we already did with the houses. So we were like, okay, well, we know how to manage people when they rent our stuff and so on. And then at that point, I was just like, oh my God, this could really be a business, right?
Yeah.
And we said, okay, we're going to manage this like a business. And
Yeah.
that's what we started doing. That's what we started How Motors. We got a website. We got, an Instagram. We did the whole thing. And we started going legit. And then at that point, we started just to bring in cars, and we started managing it like a full business.
So
Yeah.
the first step was like you just had to like just dive into it.
Just dive in.
Like
Yeah.
you dove into it, do your car, and they're like, this can work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you realize that obviously that's not sustainable, right? Because we don't want to encourage people to be like, hey, just
No.
throw your house on
please.
Airbnb and throw your car in
No,
Turo. It's going to
no.
be good.
I actually threw a car onto Turo before. I never told you guys this. You remember
Try that?
Remember? No, I had a Maserati Ghibli.
Okay.
And
We
I-
did too. We
Yeah,
love
and
that
I was
thing.
thinking, I hated that
I
car.
love that car.
I tried to get rid of it because I was just paying so much in maintenance. Like the first year it cost me,
no.
and I couldn't get anything to trade it in. So same thing happened. I swear to God, I took some pictures. I threw it on Turo.
Yeah.
The next day it was booked. I was like, "What is this? Cancel!" And then they like blacklisted me because I canceled my first trip.
That's a tip. You can never
Because
cancel
I was
your
like,
first trip.
I didn't think this was actually gonna work. Somebody booked it right. I was like, I don't have another car. I can't do this. I didn't expect somebody to book this car.
I love it.
No, but to be honest, like when we joined the business and we were like already like our third or fourth car in, that's when Randy said that we started really How Motors, because at that point this was just us getting cars and getting them booked. We applied the right behaviors at the right time because
Yeah.
one, we joined the business at a time where a lot of people didn't know about Turo, so we were not only the select few, but we started getting really nice vehicles early on. The Nissan Murano was not it for us. No, Nissan
Again,
Rogue.
back to the Nissan Murano.
Back to the Nissan. Oh my God, Nissan, please be a sponsor for my podcast. So we started applying the right behaviors right away. We are both, accustomed to work in corporate, so we always come from a very structured administrative perspective. So in anything as hobby or a hustle, we always apply, professional ethics to anything that we do. So immediately we started branding and we started doing our research, and we treated it as something that was a real kind of like a side joke / hustle. We really converted that into a profitable business, and it has become a part of our lifestyle. Like
Yeah.
I could never go back to driving a Nissan, and I could never go back to paying for a car.
Yeah, and we just like,
Simple.
to your point, Christian, that's a good one, right? Like, don't encourage people just to jump in that sense. But what we did is that then we flipped and we said, okay, we got to manage this correctly. And we really started doing our research in terms of cars, right? Like, so Zach,
Yeah.
I talk
So
to you
what are
now,
some of
it's
these
like,
mistakes that you've made
Oh,
with
tons.
cars?
Like, for
God.
instance,
Getting the car under your name.
getting the car under my name, right? That was a big mistake off the bat, because then you start getting to the point where banks are like, well, why do you need 6 cars? You know what I mean?
Not only
if you
that,
had
it's
one
your
or two
personal
car,
DTI.
But you're hurting your DTI as well. That's one, the liability that you have now with the cars, and so I mean, if you're getting 1 or 2, that's fine, right? In my opinion,
Depending on how expensive they
depending
are.
how expensive they are, right? But if once you start getting into, because we got all the way up to one point where we had about like 24 cars,
Yeah.
right? So for us, it was like, well, we can't have it all on their names. We need to separate that liability and put it into LLCs and different companies, different structures. But I think for us, and some of the mistakes, like I would have never bought an M6 again, right? Like that was an emotional buy, right? Because I was like, I love that car, but
Do you still have it?
I don't know.
No.
And because it had it had a lot of maintenance
Yeah.
issues with that. You only take it to BMW, right? Because a lot of people don't want to even deal with it. I really didn't do my research on the car in terms of the Carfax and where it's coming from and all that,
And
right?
the
And I was just
appreciation of it.
and the appreciation that I bought it high, right? And that car doesn't
Yeah,
hold its value.
BMWs, yeah.
They don't hold their value. So when we had to get rid of it, we took a hit on it. We took
Yeah.
about $10,000 hit on it when we traded it in, because we were just like, we're spending too much money, like you said, on the Maserati,
Yeah.
on the maintenance of this car, on just like the client interaction when the car breaks down, when they're driving, we need a new spark plug and this, and then it takes time. So
Yeah.
we just, that was a lesson learned for us, is really do your research on the car to make sure that it's a car that is going to last and is going to hold its value. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when I talk to you now, Zach, I'm like, all right, yeah, that's a good car, because that car is going to hold its value even, a couple years from now when you decide to trade that back in or get rid of it or whatever you decide to do.
Yeah, and this whole business really corrupts you and how you look at it, right? Because like before, I just like buy a car off impulse, and I'm like, nah. I was like, if this thing can't cover itself, or I can't get out of it, or this or that, like I just can't. I just can't do it. Like how many like a G63 is one of my favorite cars of all time. And they just keep throwing them at me, and I'm just like, it's like I don't know.
It's tough.
Not gonna work.
It's tough. And I'm sorry. Why did I interrupt you?
You didn't
I was like, think it was my ADHD. I
do the same thing.
I wanted to interject on like kind of like know your customer, which is something important for anyone listening to this podcast and interested in probably starting their own car rental company or even joining Turo. It's not just, hey, I really love this car, I want to buy it, and I want to list it. It will perform. There's a lot of, the market has changed tremendously since we started. Maybe we could have gotten an overnight booking. These days, it doesn't work that way. You really, even to list a vehicle of such caliber, you need to be an all-star host, which takes you a couple of months to get that type of experience and certain numeric values for them of how much you generate to be able to list a vehicle of XYZ dollars. But not only that, regarding the M6, it's also about like know your customer. When you identify a vehicle that you like, and even if you want half the car note to be paid, you have to think about the client that you're serving. So a client for the M6 is absolutely your worst nightmare. And I will say the same for sometimes the GT and the Porsche sometimes. These are hot rods in my opinion. They're like, you know, kind of like hot cars. People rent them, they want to abuse them, they want to push them. They don't drive these cars every day. So if you have to really like floor the gas on your Nissan Rogue, you know, it's not the same on your M6. So you're really gonna like
you gotta know what customer
you have to know who you're tailoring.
No one's racing your Nissan.
So why are the Lamborghinis different? I mean, now you guys have 2 Lamborghinis in your fleet. Like, what is different about those cars? Because they're cars that people will push. I mean, I know somebody who took my car. A friend of mine, they rented it for a day. And I seen them on IG post on a story doing 130 miles per hour. And I was like, are you serious? Like, I just had to push it. And I'm just like.
So, you know, experience will be your best friend. You know, we started catching on to a trend. These cars do have a lot of attraction and they do get booked. But at the end of the day, it might not even be worth it because you're actually paying for it in tires, brakes, constant maintenance, oil changes, etc. And it's after a while, you kind of get tired of it. And after that, you just look at them as a liability because at the end of the day, whether you buy it under LLC or under your name, you're still responsible for this car one way or another. So that's when we started introducing safer vehicles that were still very attractive to the customer. And like we were trying to identify unique vehicles to the Orlando market. You know, we're still not Miami in that sense. But we wanted to still stay attractive and attract, you know, a more higher end client.
Yeah, and for Mary and I, we kind of looked at it from the beginning, right? And this is all part of the planning. In any business that you do, we said, okay, we're relying on Turo right now, but what if Turo shuts down, right? They're a software company. So if they decide tomorrow that they're going to close their doors for whatever legal reasons or it's not going well for them, then we're stuck with all these cars. This doesn't work. So that's when we started to build a clientele. We started to build sort of our database and say, hey, we have our own people that can come directly to us and kept that management
so
of that relationship. So
if I don't want to book through Turo, how do I book your cars?
Well, you can go through our website. You go through our website. You can book right on the website directly with the car. And then you can Instagram as well. We take DMs. We do it manually. Mary manages a lot of that where she has that customer interaction. But at our website, howmotorslux.com is the best way to book.
Yeah, and we're always on Google, so you can leave us a great review.
Don't worry, we're going to have it like plastered across the screen.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I like it.
Your webpage. So you've had a lot of cars before your business. So when Zach went to buy car number 18 in a 10-year span.
Probably like 20 at that point.
You want to go through all of them? Let's see. You want to go through all of them?
Do you want me to go through all of them? Do we have time for this? Since I've known you, you had a Jeep.
A Jeep?
You had a
Jeep at one point, and then you went to a 328i.
Okay.
BMW, and then you went from the BMW to a GS350.
Okay.
Then you
good.
got
This is
GS.
Yes.
Lexus.
you got the
GS.
A6 Audi.
Okay.
Then the Maserati.
Okay.
which was the worst decision in your life. And then
so
from the
bad that he knows
Maserati,
this.
By the way, that did really
It's
good
so
on
bad
our
that he
business.
knows it. It's so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, because the Maserati Ghibli is a Fugazi.
Yeah.
People think that's all
That's a
this.
big
Those
flex,
cars are like
guys.
25 grand
Yeah.
now. They
so now,
could
mind
be-
you, I spanned from 2007 to 2017.
All right, let's keep going.
All right, so that's 17. It's 5. Right,
Yeah.
so everything's in the last 6 years. You had the 911 with the 428i because you had to have a daily driver.
Okay, so you added another car on top
Yeah.
of that too. The Grand Coupe.
And then you had to get the G wagon,
Okay.
and then I think from the G wagon you went to the M5,
Okay.
back to the G wagon.
Okay.
Then from the G wagon you went the Smurf, right? The blue 911.
Nah, you missed a car in between.
The Tesla was before. or
How do you
after
guys
the blue?
remember this?
I remember. I think I remember
The RSQ8, the Model
Oh, yeah.
S.
You
What
said
about all the
no, you did
hand-me-downs that I gave
It was the
Nadine?
Porsche, the RSQ8, the Tesla, back to the what do you have now? The Lambo,
The
Yeah.
Lambo.
and then you still have the Model 3.
Yeah.
So just your cars alone.
Yeah.
15, that's 15.
I don't even know.
That was
I
pretty
lost
good,
count.
Christian. That was pretty
That's
good.
pretty good.
That was pretty good.
I've had 4. Exactly.
And then making Nadine take my
Right.
cars because I'm like, babe, you got to drive this car
There's a
because I'm
point to
getting
all
another
of
Yeah,
car.
yeah.
That must
point
be
to all this,
so
'cause when you-
annoying for her.
Huh?
That must be so annoying for her.
Yeah, it was annoying when I just texted her earlier saying, babe, I need your social. I'm buying another car. It's coming in an hour.
I like it.
But there's a point to all this because when he said the Lambo thing, I was like, "You're crazy!" Like,
Yeah.
you're first of all, it's a glorified Audi.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Sometimes.
yeah, actually, no.
But he did it with a purpose in mind, and he did that based off of some of the coaching and guidance
Yeah.
that you guys gave. So like, if I wanted to get into this business, and yeah, I can do all the research I want,
Yeah.
but how do can I reach out to you guys for information? Where can I get some of that source of
Absolutely.
info?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we do a lot of coaching. So we've had a lot of clients that reach out to us with the same question, right? And we have a master course that we did about
Well,
a
shout
year and a
out
half
to the
ago.
BMA.
Yeah, shout out to Broke Millionaire Academy is what we call it. So we did a master course on that.
We're going to have to touch on the Broke Millionaire
Yeah,
before we
definitely,
end
definitely.
this.
And then the other, directly through Instagram, there's a link on our bio, the Broke Millionaire. And Mary also does a lot of coaching because there's actually a lot of women that are interested in it as well, right? They see Mary kind of running the business, and she does run the business completely. I'm just there. She runs the business. I get to enjoy the cars, is what I get. But she.
I
she
remember
runs
like the
business.
first time I pissed her off when I tried to offer
Oh,
a
you
side
got-
booking. Remember? Oh,
Mary.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
she's
she
like,
gets-
Zach. She called me Zach. You
Zach.
cannot do it this way. I'm like, I
Yeah,
didn't mean to.
we're very careful with the clients that we get in, right? So we're very particular with that. So yeah, you can reach out to us and get that coaching from us directly, and coaching on exactly how to start the business and what to do.
Awesome.
So let's talk about the whole Broke Millionaire concept.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
That came from, and to be very honest, culturally, I'm from Dominican Republic, right? But culturally, I think a lot of Hispanic culture, and it could be for other cultures too, but at least my experience, right? I think first immigrant parents and first generation, we come with that mentality of like, and where I come from, you have to save your money, right? Like
Yeah.
always save your money for a rainy day, right?
Never owe money.
Never owe money. That is bad, and so on, right? Like you can't, why would you borrow that much money, pay it cash, right? And that's the mentality that I grew up with around me, right? And for me, I just started saying, well, no, you have to invest your money, right? You have to. You can't just put it into a bank account and let it save for a rainy day. You're not doing anything. So put your money to work for you. So the Broke Millionaire came from the concept of like, hey, sometimes my account is in red because I just made an investment.
Yeah.
Right, that does happen where I'm just like, hey, I just spent $60K, $80K on a house, or I remodeled this house, or I did this investment, or I put the money over here, over there, right? That happens every now and then, and that's where the broke comes in because people think, oh, you have a Lambo, you got tons of cash, and I'm like, it's
Not quite.
it's tied up.
Nice payment, but,
it's tied up.
Yeah.
Like
It's
that Kevin,
fully funded.
Yeah.
God.
that Kevin Hart joke. I'm gonna need a few days.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
savings
I
and
know
checking.
it. I
Yeah,
know
the way
it.
the money works. That's kind of.
I'm always like, Christian, man, I feel broke right now. He's
Yeah.
like, yeah. He's like, you're the brokest guy I know driving a Lamborghini. Like, it must be so bad.
That's how I feel every now and then, right? Where it's like, listen, I am broke right now because I made this investment. I
Yeah.
am broke because I am trying to grow my wealth. I am broke because I am taking a risk. I am broke because I'm trying. I'm not just saying, you know what, every single dollar that I get, I'm just going to throw into it. And I'm acquiring debt too, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't see that when you're like, oh, well, this guy has this nice house or this nice car, they think right away, well, he probably paid it cash. No, like there's loans out there. I mean, you guys, this is what you guys do for a business, right? It's the rich leverage that they leverage that to their advantage to continue to grow their wealth. So that's where that kind of broke millionaire came from, because I want to spread that. And Mary came up with that name, by the way. So shout out. So she comes up with all the names. She's great at that. I want to spread that word, especially to people that come from where I come from, right? Of like, listen, you have to invest, right? You have to acquire debt is not bad, right? Not all debt is bad. So that's where the broke millionaire came from.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, love it, guys. So many gems were dropped today.
This was awesome.
If people want to kind of follow you, everything, you want to shout out like your IG and website and all that one more time?
Yeah, for me, it's The Broke Millionaire. And our car rental is How Motors. And Mary?
Yeah, you can find me at Marimar, so it's MARY _. So it's _ Mar. So Mary _
We'll put it out there.
Again,
You put it right under there.
Right under.
Sorry,
right
Aaron,
under.
as he's switching camera views right now, he'll put all that wonderful imagery for
That's
you
awesome.
guys. But
Yes.
awesome.
thank you for that, because I think the broke millionaire really dives into our message that we're trying to preach with Fully Funded is, how to leverage the things around you. And like you said, it doesn't require to have massive amounts of cash in the bank to create, income sources, to have the things you want in life without having to kill yourself or be out of debt or whatever you may have been taught over the years.
Yes.
And also realizing that these small risks, for a lot of people that are willing to take the risk, obviously there's a lot of losses, but there's also a lot of reward. And, you got to take these risks to have these big plays.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the message that I would leave with people on this. And first, again, thank you guys for having me and Mary on this. I think this was
You mean Mary and you?
Mary and
and
me. I
Randy.
like that. Yeah. And it was a good experience. And I appreciate you guys, what you're doing. The message you're sending is awesome. But that's what I would leave to people is, right, don't be afraid to take that risk. Take calculated risks. Sometimes you got to just jump into things.
Yeah.
But you got to take those calculated risks and just jump in.
Awesome.
All right, guys. So follow us on all major platforms, YouTube, Fully Funded Podcast out. We'll see you guys next time.